Good evening, dear listener. Tonight, we open the pages of one of the most enchanting tales ever told. But before we begin, if these quiet stories bring you peace, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. I'd truly love to know where you're listening from and what hour of the night finds you here. Our little circle now stretches across oceans, bound by stories and calm. So dim the lights, let the air grow still, and let your mind wander gently with me into tonight's story. Tom Thumb. Once upon a time, in a quiet hamlet at the edge of the woods, there lived a poor countryman and his wife. Each evening, when the day's toil was done, the man would sit by the chimney corner, stirring the fire until the sparks leapt, while his wife sat faithfully at her spinning wheel. Though they had enough bread to eat and a roof over their heads, sorrow weighed heavily on them, for they had no child. The man often sighed, saying, "How dull our house is! Everywhere else children laugh and quarrel and sing, yet in our cottage there is only silence, broken by the crackle of firewood and the hum of the wheel." And the woman would reply, "If heaven would only grant us one child, no bigger than my thumb, I should be the happiest of mothers. He might be small, but he would be ours, our heart's delight." And so it came to pass that, in time, the woman bore a child who was perfect in every limb, but no larger than a thumb. The parents marveled, exclaiming, "He is exactly as we wished, and we will love him dearly." They named him Tom Thumb, and though they gave him good nourishment, he never grew taller, but remained the same tiny size, quick-witted, prudent, and clever, so that everything he attempted came to good. One day his father prepared to fetch wood from the forest and muttered, "If only someone could bring the cart after me." "Father," cried Tom Thumb, "I can bring the cart to you, never fear." The father laughed. "How shall you manage that, my son? You are far too small to hold the reins." "That matters little," said Tom. "Place me in the horse's ear, and I shall call to him which way to go." The father consented, and Tom was settled in the horse's ear. Off they went, the little fellow calling, "Gee up, gee woe," in his piping voice, and the horse obeyed as though guided by a true master. Now, as they turned a corner, two strangers saw the wagon moving, yet no driver was to be seen. "Strange," said one. "Let us follow and discover this marvel." They followed to where the father was chopping wood. "Here I am, father," cried Tom, peeping out, and the man lifted him down. The strangers stared in wonder and whispered together, "Such a wonder would make us rich if we showed him in the town. Let us buy him." They offered the father gold, but he refused, saying, "He is the apple of my eye, and not for all the wealth in the world would I sell him." Yet Tom clambered up his father's coat and whispered, "Let me go, father. I shall return again." So the man gave him up sorrowfully, and Tom was set upon the brim of a hat, where he could walk about and see the land. As night drew near, Tom begged leave to be set down, only for a little while, for a change. The strangers consented, but no sooner was he upon the ground than he darted among the furrows and vanished into a mouse hole. "Good evening, masters. You may go home without me," he cried, laughing. They struck at the hole with their sticks, but could not reach him, and at last went away in vexation. Tom crept out, saying, "It is dangerous to wander holes at night. I might break my neck." By fortune he found an empty snail shell and lay down in it. But ere he slept, two thieves passed by, plotting to steal the parson's gold and silver. "I can help you," cried Tom. They started, thinking some spirit spoke, but at last found him. "How shall you aid us, little sprite?" "Easily," said Tom. "I can creep between the iron bars and hand out what you desire." So they brought him to the parsonage, but Tom shouted, "Will you have all that is here?" so loud that the cook in the next room awoke. The thieves, frightened, ran off, but crept back again. They whispered for him to be silent, but he cried louder, "What will you have? Will you have all that is here?" The maid leapt from bed, fetched a light, and the thieves fled. Tom slipped into the barn and buried himself in hay. At dawn, the maid came to feed the cows. By mischance, she took up the very hay where Tom lay and tossed it to the cow, who swallowed him whole. "Alas," cried Tom, "in what dark mill am I ground?" The maid heard the muffled voice, thought the beast bewitched, and told her master. The parson himself came, and when Tom cried, "No more hay for me," he believed an evil spirit possessed the cow and had her slaughtered. The stomach was thrown on the dunghill, and before Tom could wriggle free, a wolf devoured it in one gulp. Yet Tom did not despair. "Friend Wolf," said he, "I can guide you to a splendid feast in my father's house. There you shall find bread and bacon enough." The wolf obeyed, crept through the drain, and gorged himself. But he grew so fat he could not creep out again. Then Tom shouted and sang within him until his father and mother awoke. They fetched their weapons. Tom cried, "Strike boldly, father. I am safe inside." The man struck the wolf dead, slit him open, and drew forth his little son. The parents wept for joy. "Oh, what grief we have borne for you." "Yes, father," said Tom. "I have seen much of the world, the inside of a mouse hole, a snail's shell, a cow's stomach, and even a wolf's belly. Now I am content to stay at home. And never again shall we part with you, not for all the kingdoms under the sun," said his parents, embracing him. They gave him food, drink, and a new suit of clothes, for the old ones were spoiled with travel. And so ended the tale of Tom Thumb, who was small in stature but great in wit and courage, and who proved that even the tiniest may wander through marvels and return again to the warmth of home. The Tailor in Heaven. One bright and gentle day, it so befell that the good Lord desired to take his delight in the garden of heaven. He called to him all the apostles and all the saints, and together they walked out into the shining meadows of paradise, so that no soul remained behind save St. Peter. To him the Lord entrusted the great key and gave this strict command: "See to it that no one enters while I am away." So Peter stood faithfully at the heavenly gate, watchful and firm. Not long after, there came a knocking. The sound was timid, but it stirred the stillness. Peter raised his voice. "Who knocks there, and what wouldst thou have?" A soft and wheedling voice answered, "It is I, a poor tailor, an honest man, who begs only for admittance." Peter frowned and shook his head. "Honest indeed. Thou art one who hast been nimble of fingers and swift with the scissors. Many a hem and sleeve hast thou snipped away that was not thine. Thinkest thou heaven is for such as thee? The Lord hath forbidden me to let any pass while he is abroad." But the tailor cried out with pitiful words, "Ah, be merciful, holy keeper. Little scraps that fall of themselves from the shears are no true theft. They are trifles, not worth the telling. Look upon me. I am lame and weary. Blisters burn upon my feet from the long road. I cannot turn back. Only open the gate a little, and I will not trouble thee. I shall labor gladly, bearing the children in my arms, washing their garments, sweeping the benches where they play, and mending what is torn. Let me but creep within, and I shall do the humblest work." Now Peter's stern heart softened, and pity overcame duty. He opened the door only so wide that the tailor's thin body could slip through. He set him in the shadowy corner behind the gate and charged him to sit still and silent, lest the Lord on returning should see him and grow wroth. The tailor bowed his head and promised obedience, yet temptation is a restless master. When Peter once stepped outside, the tailor rose from his corner. Curiosity pricked him like needles, and he wandered through the halls of heaven, gazing upon wonders. He saw radiant courts and shining thrones, choirs of chairs set in bright array. At last he came upon one seat that outshone all others, a high throne of purest gold, set with gleaming jewels, and before it a footstool of gold no less splendid. It was the seat of the Lord himself, from which he looked down upon the world and beheld all deeds of men. The tailor's eyes fastened upon it. Long did he stand, for the chair pleased him above all else. At length his desire burned too hot, and he clambered up and seated himself in the place of the Almighty. Then, at once, his sight pierced the heavens and reached the earth below. He saw the fields, the towns, the rivers, and all the dealings of humankind. And there, by the water's edge, he spied an old crooked woman washing linen. He watched as she slyly laid 2 veils aside for her own use. Anger flamed in him, sharper than his reason. "A thief!" he cried, though no one heard him. In his fury, he snatched up the golden footstool and hurled it down through the sky, meaning to strike the woman. But once cast, the stool was lost to heaven, and he could not call it back. His courage failed him. He slid down quickly from the high seat, crept again behind the gate, and sat still as if nothing had stirred. Soon the Lord returned with his company of saints. He passed through the gate, saw not the tailor, and went to his throne. But when he would rest his feet, the stool was gone. Gravely he asked Peter, "Where is the footstool that stood here?" Peter knew nothing of it. The Lord questioned him further. "Hast thou let any soul within?" Peter shook his head and answered at last, "None save a lame tailor, who even now sits behind the door." Then the Lord bade the tailor be brought forth. He looked upon him and said, "Tell me truly, didst thou take away my footstool, and what hast thou done with it?" The tailor, thinking to please him, spoke with open joy. "Yes, Lord, I cast it down in righteous anger, for I saw an old woman by the stream hiding 2 veils that were not hers, and I would punish her as she deserved." Then the Lord's face grew stern. "O foolish knave, if I had judged as thou judgest, how thinkest thou wouldst have fared? Long since should heaven have been bare of seats, of benches, of forks and spoons, for all would I have flung down upon sinners. But justice here is mine alone, and punishment is not for thee, nor for Peter, but for me, the Lord." So he spoke, and with a sign commanded Peter. And Peter was forced to lead the tailor out from heaven's gate. His shoes were torn, his feet raw with blisters, and he took a stick in hand. Thus he went forth again into the world, until he came at last to the place men call Wait a Bit, where the good soldiers sit together and make merry with song and drink. And there he lingered, for heaven was shut against him, and the golden stool was lost forever. King Thrushbeard. Once upon a time, there lived a king whose daughter was of such beauty that words scarcely sufficed to tell of it. Yet for all her fairness, she was haughty in spirit and proud in heart, so that no suitor seemed worthy in her eyes. One after another she dismissed, and those who dared present themselves she mocked with sharp words, making sport of their looks and manners, until they withdrew in shame. Now it happened that the king, weary of her scorn, and anxious to see her well married, proclaimed a great feast. From distant realms and from nearby lands, he summoned every noble youth of rank who might aspire to her hand. On the appointed day they gathered, kings and grand dukes, princes, earls, barons, and gentlemen, each arrayed in splendid raiment, each presented in proper order according to his station. The king's daughter was led before them to choose where her heart inclined. Yet to every man she had a jest ready upon her lips. One was too stout, and she laughed aloud, calling him a cask of wine. Another was too tall and thin, and she cried, "Long and lank has little in his tank." A third was too short, and she said with disdain, "Stout and small runs not at all." The fourth was pale. "As wan as a ghost," she scoffed. The fifth was ruddy and bold-faced, and she sneered, "A fighting cock, fit only for the yard." The sixth was bent of body, and she mocked him as a log dried crooked behind the stove. Thus she had a taunt for everyone. Yet above all she poured her ridicule upon a good and kindly king whose chin was somewhat crooked, not ill-favored, but marked as though nature had pressed it awry. When she saw him, she burst into laughter and called aloud, "Behold, he has a chin like the beak of a thrush." And from that hour all men gave him the name of King Thrushbeard. The old king, her father, was sorely angered when he beheld how his daughter mocked all who came with honorable intent. Rising in wrath, he declared before the whole company that since she held in contempt every suitor of noble blood, she should be given in marriage to the first beggar who knocked at his gate. Not many days thereafter, a wandering fiddler came singing beneath the palace windows, clad in tattered garments, hoping for a coin or crust. When the king heard the tune, he bade the man be brought in. The fiddler entered, bowed low, and sang his song before the king and the princess. When the last note had faded, he asked humbly for a small gift. The king answered, "Your song pleases me well, and for reward I give you my daughter to wife." The proud princess turned pale, and her heart quaked within her. But the king's word was law. "I swore an oath," said he, "that I would give you to the very first beggar, and my oath I shall keep." All her tears and pleadings were of no avail. The priest was summoned, and there, in that very hour, the king's daughter was wedded to the ragged fiddler. When the vows were spoken, the king said sternly, "It is not fitting that a beggar's wife should dwell in my halls. Go forth with your husband and seek your dwelling where you may." So the fiddler took her by the hand, and together they departed on foot. They came first to a great forest, tall and green. The princess asked, "To whom does this fair forest belong?" "It is King Thrushbeard's," the fiddler replied. "Had you chosen him, it would have been yours." She sighed and said, "Ah, wretched girl that I am! If only I had taken King Thrushbeard." Next they passed a wide meadow, bright with grass and flowers. "To whom does this meadow belong?" she asked. "To King Thrushbeard," said he. "Had you taken him, it would have been yours." Again she lamented, "Ah, foolish girl, if only I had taken King Thrushbeard." Then they came to a noble town, its streets broad and its towers proud. "Whose city is this?" she asked. "King Thrushbeard's." answered the fiddler. "Had you taken him, it would have been yours." She wept and cried once more, "Woe is me, that I refused King Thrushbeard." At last they came to a wretched little hut. "And to whom belongs this miserable place?" she asked. "To me and to you," said the fiddler. "Here we shall dwell together." She had to stoop low to pass through the poor door, and within there was no servant, no comfort. "Set the fire," said the man, "and cook me my supper, for I am weary." But the king's daughter knew nothing of fire or cooking, and so the beggar man was forced to lend his own hand. Thus they lived in hardship. When the little store of food was gone, the man said, "Wife, we cannot sit idle. You must learn a craft, weave baskets." He cut willows and set them before her, but the rough twigs wounded her tender fingers. Then he bade her spin, yet the coarse flax cut her skin till blood stained the thread. At last he said, "You are fit for no work. I have made a sorry bargain. You must sell pottery in the market." Ashamed, she sat in the marketplace. Because of her beauty, the people bought readily, and some gave her money without taking the wares. For a time they lived thus. But one day a drunken soldier rode through the market and trampled her pots into shards. She ran home weeping, and her husband said, "Cease your tears. I see you are unfit for trade. I have sought a place for you in the king's kitchens. There you shall work and earn your bread." So the proud princess became a scullion, doing the lowest tasks and carrying home scraps in small jars tied to her gown. It chanced that the king's eldest son was to be wed, and the palace was filled with splendor. The poor woman stood by the door to watch, her heart aching at her fallen state. The halls glittered with light, noble ladies and lords entered in grandeur, and music filled the air. The smell of rich dishes reached her, and servants in pity tossed her morsels which she hid in her jars. Then the bridegroom came, clothed in velvet and silk, gold chains upon his neck. When his eyes fell upon her, he seized her hand and drew her forth to dance. She trembled, for she knew him at once. It was King Thrushbeard. She resisted, but he led her on. And in the struggle the cords of her jars broke, the food spilled, and laughter rose all around. Shamed beyond measure, she fled. But on the stairs he met her again. Then he spoke gently, saying, "Be not afraid. I am he, the fiddler, the soldier, the beggar. All was but a disguise, contrived for love of you and to humble your pride. You mocked me once, but I could not forget you. Therefore I brought you low, that you might learn compassion and wisdom." She wept sorely and confessed her folly, saying, "I am unworthy to be your wife." But he lifted her and said, "Take heart, the hard days are past. This day we shall be wed indeed." Then he clothed her in garments of splendor, and her father and all the court came to rejoice. The feast was greater still, and merriment filled the land. And so the proud princess became the bride of King Thrushbeard, and their joy was true and lasting. And if we had been there, surely we too would have shared in the feast and the dancing. Gossip Wolf and the Fox and his cousin. In a deep forest, where shadows stretched long and the moss muffled every step, a she-wolf brought forth a little son. Proud of her offspring and full of care for his future, she began to think of whom she might ask to stand as godfather. "It must be one of our own kin," said she to herself, "someone clever, someone shrewd, someone who can guide my boy and teach him how to walk in this hard world." Her thoughts turned to the fox, who was cousin to her in the ways of beasts. "He is cunning, yes," she mused, but he is also quick of wit and smooth of tongue. Perhaps his cleverness will be of use to my son, for the world does not always reward strength alone." So the she-wolf sought out the fox and said, "Cousin, I have borne a child, and I would have you be his sponsor. After all, you are near of blood to us, and no creature in the forest possesses such understanding and talent as you. You can instruct my little son, guide him, and perhaps one day help him to prosper." The fox bowed his head, and his eyes gleamed, though he made them look humble. "Worthy Mistress Gossip," said he, "I thank you for the honor you are doing me. Be assured that I shall repay it with every kindness. I will not fail you or your child." Then he sat at the feast which the she-wolf prepared, and he ate with gusto, laughing and making merry until the dishes were bare, and the jugs stood empty. When the feasting was done, the fox leaned close and said, "Dear Mistress Gossip, it is our duty to see that the child has good food, so that he may grow strong and thrive. Now, I know a sheepfold not far from here, and within are fat morsels that would nourish him well. Shall we fetch one?" The wolf, who trusted the smooth words of her chosen kinsman, pricked up her ears and wagged her tail. She was delighted with the plan, and set out at once with the fox. He trotted lightly, guiding her by starlight, until they came within sight of the farmyard. Then the fox stopped and lifted his narrow snout. "There, cousin," he whispered, "see the fold. You are strong and swift, and you may creep in unseen. As for me, I shall go to the far side and look whether a careless chicken strays near the fence. Between us, we shall make a feast fit for the child." So said the fox, but slyness was ever in his heart. He did not go to the far side of the farmyard at all, but instead sat himself down at the entrance to the forest, stretched out his legs, and rested in comfort. Meanwhile, the she-wolf, eager to do her part, crept into the stable where the sheep lay. But a great dog was there, sharper of ear than she had reckoned. No sooner had she set paw upon the straw than he sprang up with a roar, and his barking rang out so loud that the farm awoke in an instant. Peasants came running, their lanterns flaring in the dark. They seized Mistress Wolf, and as punishment they poured over her a burning mixture prepared for washing, so hot that her skin smarted and her fur smoked. With a howl of pain, she broke free at last and dragged herself outside, her body aching, her pride wounded. And there, not far off, lay the fox, feigning misery. He groaned and cried out, "Ah, dear Mistress Gossip, how ill I have fared! The peasants fell upon me, beat me cruelly, and broke every limb I had. If you do not wish me to lie here and perish, you must take pity and carry me upon your back." The she-wolf, though scorched and trembling, thought more of her crafty kinsman than of herself. Slowly, painfully, she stooped, lifted the fox onto her shoulders, and bore him away toward her den. Each step was torment to her, yet she murmured, "Courage, cousin. I shall save you, though I myself can scarcely walk." But when at last they reached her dwelling, the fox leapt lightly down, nimble as ever, his body unscathed. He laughed loud and long, and his eyes shone with malice. "Farewell, dear Mistress Gossip," he cried. "May the roasting you have had do you good. I, for my part, am sound and hearty." With that he bounded away into the forest, his brush high, leaving the she-wolf bewildered and betrayed. And from that day forth, she remembered that the fox's tongue was silver, but his heart was false, and she warned her son that fair words are often snares, and that cunning may serve itself before it serves its kin. the Four Skilful Brothers. There was once a poor man who had 4 sons, and when they were grown up, he said to them, "My dear children, you must now go out into the world, for I have nothing to give you. So set out and go to some distance and learn a trade and see how you can make your way." So the 4 brothers took their sticks, bade their father farewell, and went through the town gate together. When they had traveled about for some time, they came to a crossway which branched off in 4 different directions. Then said the eldest, "Here we must separate, but on this day, 4 years, we will meet each other again at this spot, and in the meantime, we will seek our fortunes." Then each of them went his way, and the eldest met a man who asked him where he was going and what he was intending to do. "I want to learn a trade," he replied. Then the other said, "Come with me and be a thief." "No," he answered, "that is no longer regarded as a reputable trade, and the end of it is that one has to swing on the gallows." "Oh," said the man, "you need not be afraid of the gallows. I will only teach you to get such things as no other man could ever lay hold of, and no one will ever detect you." So he allowed himself to be talked into it, and while with the man became an accomplished thief, and so dexterous that nothing was safe from him, if he once desired to have it. The second brother met a man who put the same question to him, what he wanted to learn in the world. "I don't know yet," he replied. "Then come with me and be an astronomer. There is nothing better than that, for nothing is hid from you." He liked the idea and became such a skillful astronomer that when he had learnt everything and was about to travel onwards, his master gave him a telescope and said to him, "With that you canst thou see whatsoever takes place either on earth or in heaven, and nothing can remain concealed from thee." A huntsman took the third brother into training and gave him such excellent instruction in everything which related to huntsmanship that he became an experienced hunter. When he went away, his master gave him a gun and said, "It will never fail you. Whatsoever you aim at, you are certain to hit." The youngest brother also met a man who spoke to him and inquired what his intentions were. "Would you not like to be a tailor?" said he. "Not that I know of," said the youth. "Sitting doubled up from morning till night, driving the needle and the goose backwards and forwards, is not to my taste." "Oh, but you are speaking in ignorance," answered the man. "With me you would learn a very different kind of tailoring, which is respectable and proper, and for the most part very honorable." So he let himself be persuaded, and went with the man, and learnt his art from the very beginning. When they parted, the man gave the youth a needle, and said, "With this you can sew together whatever is given you, whether it is as soft as an egg or as hard as steel, and it will all become one piece of stuff, so that no seam will be visible." When the appointed 4 years were over, the 4 brothers arrived at the same time at the crossroads, embraced and kissed each other, and returned home to their father. "So now," said he, quite delighted, "the wind has blown you back again to me." They told him of all that had happened to them, and that each had learnt his own trade. Now they were sitting just in front of the house under a large tree, and the father said, "I will put you all to the test, and see what you can do." Then he looked up and said to his second son, "Between 2 branches up at the top of this tree, there is a chaffinch's nest. Tell me how many eggs there are in it." The astronomer took his glass, looked up, and said, "There are 5. Then the father said to the eldest, "Fetch the eggs down without disturbing the bird which is sitting hatching them." The skillful thief climbed up and took the 5 eggs from beneath the bird, which never observed what he was doing, and remained quietly sitting where she was, and brought them down to his father. The father took them, and put one of them on each corner of the table, and the 5th in the middle, and said to the huntsman, "With one shot thou shalt shoot me the 5 eggs in 2, through the middle." The huntsman aimed and shot the eggs, all 5 as the father had desired, and that at one shot. He certainly must have had some of the powder for shooting round corners. "Now it's your turn," said the father to the 4th son. "You shall sew the eggs together again, and the young birds that are inside them as well, and you must do it so that they are not hurt by the shot." The tailor brought his needle and sewed them as his father wished. When he had done this, the thief had to climb up the tree again and carry them to the nest and put them back again under the bird without her being aware of it. The bird sat her full time, and after a few days the young ones crept out, and they had a red line round their necks where they had been sewn together by the tailor. "Well," said the old man to his sons, "I begin to think you are worth more than breen clover. You have used your time well and learnt something good. I can't say which of you deserves the most praise. That will be proved if you have but an early opportunity of using your talents." Not long after this, there was a great uproar in the country, for the king's daughter was carried off by a dragon. The king was full of trouble about it, both by day and night, and caused it to be proclaimed that whosoever brought her back should have her to wife. The 4 brothers said to each other, "This would be a fine opportunity for us to show what we can do," and resolved to go forth together and liberate the king's daughter. "I will soon know where she is," said the astronomer, and looked through his telescope and said, "I see her already. She is far away from here on a rock in the sea, and the dragon is beside her watching her." Then he went to the king and asked for a ship for himself and his brothers, and sailed with them over the sea until they came to the rock. There the king's daughter was sitting, and the dragon was lying asleep on her lap. The huntsman said, "I dare not fire. I should kill the beautiful maiden at the same time." "Then I will try my art," said the thief, and he crept thither and stole her away from under the dragon so quietly and dexterously that the monster never remarked it, but went on snoring. Full of joy, they hurried off with her on board ship and steered out into the open sea. But the dragon, who, when he awoke, had found no princess there, followed them and came snorting angrily through the air. Just as he was circling above the ship and about to descend on it, the huntsman shouldered his gun and shot him to the heart. The monster fell down dead, but was so large and powerful that his fall shattered the whole ship. Fortunately, however, they laid hold of a couple of planks and swam about the wide sea. Then again they were in great peril. But the tailor, who was not idle, took his wondrous needle, and with a few stitches sewed the planks together, and they seated themselves upon them, and collected together all the fragments of the vessel. Then he sewed these so skillfully together that in a very short time the ship was once more seaworthy, and they could go home again in safety. When the king once more saw his daughter, there were great rejoicings. He said to the 4 brothers, "One of you shall have her to wife, but which of you it is to be you must settle among yourselves." Then a warm contest arose among them, for each of them preferred his own claim. The astronomer said, "If I had not seen the princess, all your arts would have been useless, so she is mine." The thief said, "What would have been the use of your seeing if I had not got her away from the dragon. So she is mine." The huntsman said, "You and the princess and all of you would have been torn to pieces by the dragon if my ball had not hit him, so she is mine." The tailor said, "And if I, by my art, had not sewn the ship together again, you would all of you have been miserably drowned, so she is mine." Then the king uttered this saying, "Each of you has an equal right, and as all of you cannot have the maiden, none of you shall have her, but I will give to each of you, as a reward, half a kingdom." The brothers were pleased with this decision and said, "It is better thus than that we should be at variance with each other." Then each of them received half a kingdom, and they lived with their father in the greatest happiness as long as it pleased God. Fair Katrinelje and Pif-Paf-Poltrie. Once upon a time, there lived a curious little fellow by the name of Pif-Paf-Poltrie. He was a wanderer by trade, quick of speech, light of foot, and bold of heart. One morning, when the sun had scarcely lifted the mists from the meadows, he set out with a single thought in his mind. He wished to marry fair Katrinelje, the daughter of Father Hollenthe. So he went straightway to the house, where the shutters were still half closed, and the cock crowed thrice upon the roof. Standing at the gate, he knocked and cried aloud, "Good day, Father Hollenthe." From within came the gruff voice of the master of the house. "Many thanks, Pif-Paf-Poltrie. What seek you so early?" And the suitor replied, "May I be allowed to have your daughter?" Father Hollenthe stroked his beard, thoughtful and slow, and said, "Oh yes, it may be so. If Mother Malco, Brother High and Mighty, Sister Käsetraut, and fair Katrinelje herself are willing, then you may have her." "See, where is Mother Malco, then?" asked Pif-Paf-Poltrie eagerly. "She is in the cow-house, milking the red-spotted cow," answered Father Hollenthe. So off he went, past the orchard and into the cow-house, where Mother Malco bent low with her milking pail. "Good day, Mother Malco," he called. "Many thanks, Pif-Paf-Poltrie," said she, wiping the foam of milk from her hands. "May I be allowed to have your daughter?" asked the suitor. Mother Malco laughed a little and replied, "Oh yes, it may be so. If Father Hollenthe, Brother High and Mighty, Sister Käsetraut, and fair Katrinelje are willing, then you may have her." "Where is Brother High and Mighty?" asked he. "He is in the chamber, chopping wood upon the block," she told him. So Pif-Paf-Poltrie went to the chamber, and there was Brother High and Mighty, swinging his axe mightily. "Good day, Brother High and Mighty." "Many thanks, Pif-Paf-Poltrie," said the brother, pausing in his work. "May I be allowed to have your sister?" "Oh yes," said Brother High and Mighty. "If Father Hollenthe, Mother Malco, Sister Käsetraut, and fair Katrinelje are willing, you may have her." "Where is Sister Käsetraut, then?" asked the suitor. "She is in the garden, cutting cabbages green and white," answered the brother. Off went Pif-Paf-Poltrie again, into the garden rows where Sister Käsetraut bent with her knife among the cabbages. "Good day, Sister Käsetraut," said he. "Many thanks, Pif-Paf-Poltrie," answered she, looking up. "May I be allowed to have your sister?" "Oh yes," said Sister Käsetraut. "If Father Hollenthe, Mother Malco, Brother High and Mighty, and fair Katrinelje are willing, then you may have her." "And where is fair Katrinelje?" asked he at once. "She is in the chamber, counting out her farthings," Sister Käsetraut replied. So Pif-Paf-Poltrie hurried to the chamber, and there sat fair Katrinelje, her golden hair bound with a ribbon, her eyes bright as morning, counting her little store of coins, farthing by farthing. "Good day, fair Katrinelje," he said softly. "Many thanks, Pif-Paf-Poltrie," she answered, raising her eyes. "Wilt thou be my bride?" asked the suitor. "Oh yes," said fair Katrinelje. "If Father Hollenthe, Mother Malco, Brother High and Mighty, and Sister Kezetrout are willing, I am ready." Then Pif-Paf-Poltrie asked her, "And fair Katrinelje, how much dowry hast thou?" She laid her coins in neat rows and answered, 14 farthings in ready money, 3.5 groschen owing to me, 1/2 pound of dried apples, a handful of fried bread, and a handful of spices besides, and many other things are mine. Have I not a dowry fine?" But Katrinelje was curious too, and so she asked, "Pif-Paf-Poltrie, what is thy trade? Art thou a tailor?" "Something better," said he proudly. "A shoemaker?" "Something better." "A husbandman plowing the field?" "Something better still." "A joiner working with wood?" "Something better." "A smith who forges iron?" "Something better." "A miller grinding corn?" "Something better." "Perhaps a broom maker," said she at last with a sly smile. "Yes, that is what I am," cried Pif-Paf-Poltrie, clapping his hands. "Is it not a fine trade?" And so the tale tells us that fair Katrinelje, with her farthings, her dried apples, her handful of bread and spices, and her dowry of cheerful willingness, was promised to Pif-Paf-Poltrie, the broom maker, who thought himself better than tailor, shoemaker, husbandman, joiner, smith, or miller. And if the two were content, then content they remained. And whether they lived happily ever after, the story does not say. But it is certain that their names are still sung in the old rhymes of the countryside. The Lambkin and the Little Fish. Once, in a land not far and not near, there lived a little brother and a little sister. They were bound to one another with cords stronger than iron, for they loved each other with all the warmth their hearts could carry. Their days would have been full of laughter and play, had fate been kinder. For their mother, who had once held them close, had been taken by death. And in her place came another woman, a stepmother, who carried no love for them. Her face was fair to strangers, but her heart was hard as flint, and her thoughts sharp as thorns. In secret, she whispered ill against the children, weaving harm where she could, and setting snares unseen. The children, innocent of all this, often joined the other boys and girls in the meadow before their house. There, where the grass was sweet and the daisies nodded, they played their games of circle and song. At the edge of the meadow lay a deep pond, its water dark and still, a mirror to the sky. Around it the children ran, their voices ringing like bells, their feet treading patterns into the earth. And they sang together the old rhyme of counting out, "Eniki beneki, let me live, and I to thee my bird will give. The little bird shall straw then seek, the straw I'll give the cow to eat. The pretty cow will give me milk, the milk I'll carry to the baker skilled. The baker he shall bake a cake, the cake I'll give the cat to take. The cat shall catch some mice for that. The mice I'll hang up in the smoke, and then you'll see the snow." So they sang, hand in hand, standing in a ring. And whosoever the final word snow fell upon had to fly from the circle, while all the others gave chase, laughing as the meadow echoed with their joy. But in the high chamber of the house, behind the window, the stepmother sat. She gazed down upon them, her eyes narrowing, her lips pressed thin with envy. The sight of the children's merriment was like a thorn in her flesh, and her heart grew hotter with anger. She was no ordinary woman, for she had given herself to dark arts, and her knowledge of witchcraft was great. With whispered words and wicked thoughts, she stretched forth her power, and in a breath the happy brother became a fish, silver-scaled and sorrowful, and the gentle sister was turned into a lamb, white as snow, soft and trembling. The fish slipped into the shadowed pond, circling without rest, his heart heavy with grief. The lamb wandered upon the meadow, but her mouth could not touch a single blade of grass, and her eyes were clouded with sorrow. So, the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, and the spell held fast. One day, not long after, guests came riding to the castle. They were strangers of noble bearing, and the false stepmother thought to herself, "Now fortune smiles on me, for what better time to rid myself of the lamb than when the house is in need of feasting?" She summoned the cook and said with cold command, "Go quickly into the meadow, fetch the lamb, and slaughter it. We have nothing else fit to set before our guests." The cook obeyed, though his heart was heavy. He took the little lamb from the meadow, tied its feet gently, and bore it into the kitchen. The creature bore all patiently, as if it knew its hour had come. And when the cook drew forth his knife, sharpening it upon the threshold stone, he heard a sound that froze his blood. For from the pond beside the kitchen, a small fish swam to and fro, and it lifted its sad eyes toward him. The lamb looked down through the window and cried in a clear, sorrowful voice, "Ah, brother, in the pond so deep, how heavy is my heart." The cook now whets his sharpened knife to steal away my tender life. And the fish answered in tones no less mournful, "Ah, sister dear, above so high, how heavy is my heart, for here I drift in waters dark, and may not reach where thou art." When the cook heard such speech, and knew it came from the lips of lamb and fish, his soul trembled within him. "This is no common beast," he thought, "but creatures enchanted by foul sorcery." He threw down his knife and whispered, "Be at peace, little lamb, I shall not harm thee." Instead, he went to the flock and took another sheep, preparing it for the guests. Then he carried the enchanted lamb secretly away to a humble peasant woman who lived nearby. To her he told all he had seen and heard. Now this peasant woman was none other than the foster mother who once nursed the little sister at her breast. At the first look into the lamb's eyes, she knew the truth. "This is my child," she murmured, bewitched by the wicked lady of the house. With haste she bore the lamb to a wise woman in the woods, a woman known for blessings stronger than curses. The wise woman listened, nodded, and spoke charms of undoing. She took water from the spring and sprinkled it over the lamb and the fish, speaking words older than the stones, words that carried the weight of mercy. And lo, before their eyes the lamb's fleece melted into a gown of linen, and the fish's scales faded, leaving behind a small boy, pale but smiling. Brother and sister stood once more in their own true shapes, and tears of joy ran down their cheeks as they embraced. The wise woman led them far from the stepmother's reach, into a quiet hut hidden deep within the great forest. There, beneath the shelter of tall trees and the song of birds, they dwelt together. Though they had little, they were content, for they were free from the hand of the wicked. And they had each other, and so, in the shadow of the forest, they grew up strong and happy, bound by love that no spell could ever break again. Eve's various children. When Adam and Eve were driven forth from the gates of paradise, the flaming sword of the cherubim flashing behind them, they wandered sorrowfully until they came to a barren and stony place, where no tree bore fruit, and the earth yielded nothing save thorns and thistles. There they were compelled to build for themselves a poor dwelling, and to earn their bread in the sweat of their brow. Adam, strong though wearied, dug into the stubborn ground with his spade, breaking clods from sunrise until nightfall, while Eve sat spinning flax with patient hands, her heart heavy with memory of the lost garden. Each year, as time passed on, Eve brought forth a child into the world. Yet the children were not alike. Some were comely and fair to behold, with bright eyes and golden hair, their faces shining with gentleness and grace. But others were misshapen and rough, with crooked limbs, darkened skin, and features that seemed harsh to look upon. Still Eve loved them all, for each was the fruit of her travail, though her heart at times leaned more tenderly toward the fair than the homely. Now, after many years had gone by, the Lord God, who is merciful and just, sent an angel to them with a message. "Prepare thy house, for the heavenly Father himself will come down to behold how thou livest, and how thou carest for the offspring given thee." At these words, Eve's heart leapt with joy. "What grace is this, that the Lord of heaven will enter beneath my roof?" she cried. Straightway she began to cleanse her poor cottage. With untiring hands she swept and scrubbed every corner, decked the walls with meadow flowers, and strewed reeds freshly cut upon the floor, so that the place might appear sweet and fair. Then she called in her children, but only those that were beautiful in form and face. These she bathed in clear water until their skin shone, combed their hair until it glistened like silk, and clothed them in clean raiment. She taught them how to stand before the Lord, with quiet and modest bearing, to bow low, to stretch forth their hands humbly, and to answer with words soft and sensible. But as for the children who were ugly and rough, she would not suffer them to be seen. One she thrust beneath the hay in the shed, another she drove up into the rafters, a third she hid in the straw, a fourth she shut in the stove, a fifth she sent down into the cellar, a sixth she thrust beneath a tub, a seventh beneath the wine cask, an eighth she wrapped under an old fur cloak, the ninth and 10th she concealed beneath the coarse cloth, out of which she was wont to fashion garments, and the 11th and 12th she pushed under the leather from which Adam cut their shoes. Thus she thought to keep them far from the sight of the Lord, lest his eyes should fall harshly upon them. Scarcely was all prepared when there came a knock at the door, solemn and strong. Adam looked through a crack, and when he beheld who stood without, he trembled, for it was the Lord himself. With reverence, Adam opened the door wide, and the heavenly Father entered. There, in a row, stood the fair children, washed and shining, bowing before him, stretching forth their hands, and kneeling low upon the floor. The Lord smiled gently, and laid his hand upon the first, saying, "Thou shalt be a mighty king." To the second he said, "Thou shalt be a prince." To the third, "Thou a count." To the fourth, "Thou a knight." To the fifth, "Thou a nobleman." To the sixth, "Thou a burgher." To the seventh, "Thou a merchant." To the eighth, "Thou a man learned in wisdom." And with each word he poured rich blessings upon them, so that they were filled with honor. When Eve beheld how mild and gracious was the Lord, she said within herself, "Surely his mercy is great, Perhaps he will also look kindly on those poor little ones whom I have hidden away." So she hastened and brought them forth, one after another, from their hiding places, out of the hay, the straw, the stove, the cellar, the cask, the cloak, the cloth, and the leather. At last, the whole rude, dirty, sooty, and ragged company stood before the Lord. Then the Heavenly Father looked on them also with a smile, for his heart is full of compassion. He laid his hand on the first and said, "Thou shalt be a peasant to till the ground." To the second, "Thou a fisherman, casting thy nets upon the waters." To the third, "Thou a smith, striking iron upon the anvil." To the fourth, "Thou a tanner, making leather from hide." To the fifth, "Thou a weaver, spinning cloth upon the loom." To the sixth, "Thou a shoemaker, shaping soles for the feet of men." To the seventh, "Thou a tailor, cutting garments for all folk." To the eighth, "Thou a potter, forming vessels of clay." To the ninth, "Thou a wagoner, guiding beasts and cart." To the 10th, "Thou a sailor, voyaging upon the seas." To the 11th, "Thou an errand boy, running hither and thither." And to the 12th he said, "Thou shalt be a scullion, serving in the kitchen all thy days." When Eve heard these words, she was troubled in her heart, and she said, "Lord, how unequally dost thou divide thy gifts, for after all they are all my children, whom I bore in pain and sorrow. Should not thy favor be given alike to each?" But the Lord answered with wisdom, "Eve, thou art blinded by thy mother's love. It is needful that the whole world be furnished from thy offspring. If all were princes and lords, who then should plow the field, thresh the grain, grind the meal, and bake the bread? Who should forge the iron, weave the cloth, shape the shoes, and build the houses? Who should sail the seas, carry burdens, and labor with his hands? Each shall have his place and calling, so that one may uphold another, and all together be fed, even as the limbs of one body minister each to the other." Then Eve bowed her head humbly and answered, "Ah, Lord, forgive my foolish speech. Thy wisdom is higher than my thoughts. Do with my children according to thy holy will." And the Lord departed, leaving peace upon the house of Adam and Eve. And from that day forth the children of men were divided into high and low, mighty and humble, yet each needful to the other, that the earth might be filled and all mankind sustained. 1 eye, 2 eyes, and 3 eyes. There was once a woman who had 3 daughters, the eldest of whom was called 1 eye, because she had only 1 eye in the middle of her forehead, and the second 2 eyes, because she had 2 eyes like other folks, and the youngest 3 eyes, because she had 3 eyes, and her 3rd eye was also in the center of her forehead. However, as 2 eyes saw just as other human beings did, her sisters and her mother could not endure her. They said to her, "Thou, with thy 2 eyes, art no better than the common people. Thou dost not belong to us." They pushed her about and threw old clothes to her and gave her nothing to eat but what they left, and did everything that they could to make her unhappy. It came to pass that 2 eyes had to go out into the fields and tend the goat, but she was still quite hungry, because her sisters had given her so little to eat. So she sat down on a ridge and began to weep, and so bitterly that 2 streams ran down from her eyes. And once, when she looked up in her grief, a woman was standing beside her, who said, "Why art thou weeping, little 2 eyes?" 2 eyes answered, "Have I not reason to weep when I have 2 eyes like other people, and my sisters and mother hate me for it, and push me from one corner to another, throw old clothes at me, and give me nothing to eat but the scraps they leave. Today they have given me so little that I am still quite hungry. Then the wise woman said, Wipe away thy tears, Two Eyes, and I will tell thee something to stop thee ever suffering from hunger again. Just say to thy goat, Bleat, my little goat, bleat, cover the table with something to eat. And then a clean, well-spread little table will stand before thee, with the most delicious food upon it, of which thou mayst eat as much as thou art inclined for. And when thou hast had enough, and hast no more need of the little table, just say, Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray, and take the table quite away, and then it will vanish again from thy sight. Hereupon the wise woman departed, but Two Eyes thought, I must instantly make a trial, and see if what she said is true, for I am far too hungry. And she said, Bleat, my little goat, bleat, cover the table with something to eat. And scarcely had she spoken the words than a little table, covered with a white cloth, was standing there, and on it was a plate with a knife and fork and a silver spoon. And the most delicious food was there also, warm and smoking as if it had just come out of the kitchen. Then Two Eyes said the shortest prayer she knew, Lord God, be with us always, Amen, and helped herself to some food and enjoyed it. And when she was satisfied, she said, as the wise woman had taught her, Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray, and take the table quite away. And immediately the little table and everything on it was gone again. That is a delightful way of keeping house, thought Two Eyes, and was quite glad and happy. In the evening, when she went home with her goat, she found a small earthenware dish with some food, which her sisters had set ready for her, but she did not touch it. Next day she again went out with her goat, and left the few bits of broken bread which had been handed to her, lying untouched. The first and second time that she did this, her sisters did not remark it at all, but as it happened every time, they did observe it, and said, There is something wrong about Two Eyes. She always leaves her food untasted, and she used to eat up everything that was given her. She must have discovered other ways of getting food. In order that they might learn the truth, they resolved to send One Eye with Two Eyes when she went to drive her goat to the pasture, to observe what Two Eyes did when she was there, and whether anyone brought her anything to eat and drink. So when Two Eyes set out the next time, One Eye went to her and said, I will go with you to the pasture and see that the goat is well taken care of and driven where there is food. But Two Eyes knew what was in One Eye's mind, and drove the goat into high grass and said, Come, One Eye, we will sit down, and I will sing something to you. One Eye sat down and was tired with the unaccustomed walk and the heat of the sun, and Two Eyes sang constantly, One Eye, wakest thou? One Eye, sleepest thou? Until One Eye shut her one eye and fell asleep. And as soon as Two Eyes saw that One Eye was fast asleep and could discover nothing, she said, Bleat, my little goat, bleat, cover the table with something to eat, and seated herself at her table and ate and drank until she was satisfied. And then she again cried, Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray, and take the table quite away. And in an instant all was gone. Two Eyes now awakened One Eye and said, One Eye, you want to take care of the goat and go to sleep while you are doing it, and in the meantime the goat might run all over the world. Come, let us go home again. So they went home, and again Two Eyes let her little dish stand untouched, and One Eye could not tell her mother why she would not eat it, and to excuse herself said, "I fell asleep when I was out." Next day the mother said to Three Eyes, "This time thou shalt go and observe if Two Eyes eats anything when she is out, and if anyone fetches her food and drink, for she must eat and drink in secret." So Three Eyes went to Two Eyes and said, "I will go with you and see if the goat is taken proper care of and driven where there is food." But Two Eyes knew what was in Three Eyes' mind and drove the goat into high grass and said, "We will sit down, and I will sing something to you, Three Eyes." Three Eyes sat down and was tired with the walk and with the heat of the sun, and Two Eyes began the same song as before and sang, "Three Eyes, are you waking?" But then, instead of singing, "Three Eyes, are you sleeping?" as she ought to have done, she thoughtlessly sang, "Two Eyes, are you sleeping?" and sang all the time, "Three Eyes, are you waking? Two Eyes, are you sleeping?" Then two of the eyes which Three Eyes had shut and fell asleep, but the third, as it had not been named in the song, did not sleep. It is true that Three Eyes shut it, but only in her cunning, to pretend it was asleep too. But it blinked and could see everything very well, and when Two Eyes thought that Three Eyes was fast asleep, she used her little charm, "Bleat, my little goat, bleat, cover the table with something to eat," and ate and drank as much as her heart desired, and then ordered the table to go away again. "Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray, and take the table quite away." And Three Eyes had seen everything. Then Two Eyes came to her, waked her, and said, "Have you been asleep, Three Eyes? You are a good caretaker. Come, we will go home." And when they got home, Two Eyes again did not eat, and Three Eyes said to the mother, "Now I know why that high-minded thing there does not eat. When she is out, she says to the goat, 'Bleat, my little goat, bleat, cover the table with something to eat.' And then a little table appears before her covered with the best of food, much better than any we have here. And when she has eaten all she wants, she says, 'Bleat, bleat, my little goat, I pray, and take the table quite away.' And all disappears. I watched everything closely. She put two of my eyes to sleep by using a certain form of words, but luckily the one in my forehead kept awake. Then the envious mother cried, 'Dost thou want to fare better than we do? The desire shall pass away.' And she fetched a butcher's knife and thrust it into the heart of the goat, which fell down dead. When Two Eyes saw that, she went out full of trouble, seated herself on the ridge of grass at the edge of the field, and wept bitter tears. Suddenly the wise woman once more stood by her side and said, 'Two Eyes, why art thou weeping?' 'Have I not reason to weep?' she answered. 'The goat which covered the table for me every day when I spoke your charm has been killed by my mother, and now I shall again have to bear hunger and want.' The wise woman said, 'Two Eyes, I will give thee a piece of good advice. Ask thy sisters to give thee the entrails of the slaughtered goat and bury them in the ground in front of the house, and thy fortune will be made.' Then she vanished, and Two Eyes went home and said to her sisters, 'Dear sisters, do give me some part of my goat. I don't wish for what is good, but give me the entrails.' Then they laughed and said, 'If that's all you want, you can have it.' So Two Eyes took the entrails and buried them quietly in the evening, in front of the house door, as the wise woman had counseled her to do. Next morning, when they all awoke and went to the house door, there stood a strangely magnificent tree with leaves of silver and fruit of gold hanging among them, so that in all the wide world there was nothing more beautiful or precious. They did not know how the tree could have come there during the night, but Two Eyes saw that it had grown up out of the entrails of the goat, for it was standing on the exact spot where she had buried them. Then the mother said to One Eye, "Climb up, my child, and gather some of the fruit of the tree for us." One Eye climbed up, but when she was about to get hold of one of the golden apples, the branch escaped from her hands. And that happened each time, so that she could not pluck a single apple, let her do what she might. Then said the mother, "Three Eyes, do you climb up? You with your 3 eyes can look about you better than One Eye." One Eye slipped down, and 3 Eyes climbed up. 3 Eyes was not more skillful, and might search as she liked, but the golden apples always escaped her. At length the mother grew impatient, and climbed up herself, but could get hold of the fruit no better than One Eye and 3 Eyes, for she always clutched empty air. Then said, "Two Eyes, I will just go up, perhaps I may succeed better." The sisters cried, "You indeed with your 2 eyes, what can you do?" But 2 Eyes climbed up, and the golden apples did get out of her way, but came into her hand of their own accord, so that she could pluck them one after the other, and brought a whole apronful down with her. The mother took them away from her, and instead of treating poor 2 Eyes any better for this, she and One Eye and 3 Eyes were only envious, because 2 Eyes alone had been able to get the fruit, and they treated her still more cruelly. It so befell that once, when they were all standing together by the tree, a young knight came up. "Quick, 2 Eyes," cried the 2 sisters, "creep under this, and don't disgrace us." And with all speed, they turned an empty barrel, which was standing close by the tree, over poor 2 Eyes, and they pushed the golden apples which she had been gathering under it too. When the knight came nearer, he was a handsome lord, who stopped and admired the magnificent gold and silver tree, and said to the 2 sisters, "To whom does this fine tree belong? Anyone who would bestow one branch of it on me might in return for it ask whatsoever he desired." Then One Eye and 3 Eyes replied that the tree belonged to them, and that they would give him a branch. They both took great trouble, but they were not able to do it, for the branches and fruit both moved away from them every time. Then said the knight, "It is very strange that the tree should belong to you, and that you should still not be able to break a piece off." They again asserted that the tree was their property. Whilst they were saying so, 2 Eyes rolled out a couple of golden apples from under the barrel to the feet of the knight, for she was vexed with One Eye and 3 Eyes for not speaking the truth. When the knight saw the apples, he was astonished, and asked where they came from. One Eye and 3 Eyes answered that they had another sister, who was not allowed to show herself, for she had only 2 eyes like any common person. The knight, however, desired to see her, and cried, "2 Eyes, come forth." Then 2 Eyes, quite comforted, came from beneath the barrel, and the knight was surprised at her great beauty, and said, "Thou, 2 Eyes, canst certainly break off a branch from the tree for me." "Yes," replied 2 Eyes, "that I certainly shall be able to do, for the tree belongs to me." And she climbed up, and with the greatest ease broke off a branch with beautiful silver leaves and golden fruit, and gave it to the knight. Then said the knight, "2 Eyes, what shall I give thee for it?" "Alas," answered 2 Eyes, "I suffer from hunger and thirst, grief and want, from early morning till late night. If you would take me with you and deliver me from these things, I should be happy." So the knight lifted Two Eyes onto his horse and took her home, with him to his father's castle, and there he gave her beautiful clothes, and meat and drink to her heart's content, and as he loved her so much, he married her, and the wedding was solemnized with great rejoicing. When Two Eyes was thus carried away by the handsome knight, her two sisters grudged her good fortune in downright earnest. The wonderful tree, however, still remains with us, thought they, and even if we can gather no fruit from it, still everyone will stand still and look at it, and come to us and admire it. Who knows what good things may be in store for us? But next morning the tree had vanished, and all their hopes were at an end. And when Two Eyes looked out of the window of her own little room, to her great delight it was standing in front of it, and so it had followed her. Two Eyes lived a long time in happiness. Once 2 poor women came to her in her castle and begged for alms. She looked in their faces and recognized her sisters, One Eye and Three Eyes, who had fallen into such poverty that they had to wander about and beg their bread from door to door. Two Eyes, however, made them welcome and was kind to them, and took care of them, so that they both, with all their hearts, repented the evil that they had done their sister in their youth. The brother and sister. The brother took his sister's hand and said to her, "Since our mother died, we have had no good days. Our stepmother beats us every day, and if we go near her, she kicks us away. We have nothing to eat but hard crusts of bread left over. The dog under the table fares better. He gets a good piece every now and then. If our mother only knew how she would pity us. Come, let us go together out into the wide world." So they went, and journeyed the whole day through fields and meadows and stony places. And if it rained, the sister said, "The skies, and we are weeping together." In the evening they came to a great wood, and they were so weary with hunger and their long journey that they climbed up into a high tree and fell asleep. The next morning, when they awoke, the sun was high in heaven and shone brightly through the leaves. Then said the brother, "Sister, I am thirsty. If I only knew where to find a brook, that I might go and drink. I almost think that I hear one rushing." So the brother got down and led his sister by the hand, and they went to seek the brook. But their wicked stepmother was a witch, and had known quite well that the 2 children had run away, and had sneaked after them, as only witches can, and had laid a spell on all the brooks in the forest. So, when they found a little stream flowing smoothly over its pebbles, the brother was going to drink of it. But the sister heard how it said in its rushing, "He a tiger will be who drinks of me, who drinks of me a tiger will be." Then the sister cried, "Pray, dear brother, do not drink, or you will become a wild beast, and will tear me in pieces." So the brother refrained from drinking, though his thirst was great, and he said he would wait till he came to the next brook. When they came to a second brook, the sister heard it say, "He a wolf will be who drinks of me, who drinks of me a wolf will be." Then the sister cried, "Pray, dear brother, do not drink, or you will be turned into a wolf, and will eat me up." So the brother refrained from drinking, and said, "I will wait until we come to the next brook, and then I must drink, whatever you say. My thirst is so great." And when they came to the third brook, the sister heard how in its rushing it said, "Who drinks of me a fawn will be, he a fawn will be who drinks of me." Then the sister said, "O my brother, I pray drink not, or you will be turned into a fawn, and run away far from me." But he had already kneeled by the side of the brook, and stooped and drunk of the water, and as the first drops passed his lips, he became a fawn. And the sister wept over her poor lost brother, and the fawn wept also, and stayed sadly beside her. At last the maiden said, "Be comforted, dear fawn. Indeed, I will never leave you." Then she untied her golden girdle and bound it round the fawn's neck, and went and gathered rushes to make a soft cord, which she fastened to him. And then she led him on, and they went deeper into the forest. And when they had gone a long, long way, they came at last to a little house, and the maiden looked inside, and as it was empty, she thought, "We might as well live here." And she fetched leaves and moss to make a soft bed for the fawn, and every morning she went out and gathered roots and berries and nuts for herself, and fresh grass for the fawn, who ate out of her hand with joy, frolicking round her. At night, when the sister was tired and had said her prayers, she laid her head on the fawn's back, which served her for a pillow, and softly fell asleep. And if only the brother could have got back his own shape again, it would have been a charming life. So they lived a long while in the wilderness alone. Now it happened that the king of that country held a great hunt in the forest. The blowing of the horns, the barking of the dogs, and the lusty shouts of the huntsmen sounded through the wood, and the fawn heard them, and was eager to be among them. "Oh," said he to his sister, "do let me go to the hunt. I cannot stay behind any longer," and begged so long that at last she consented. "But mind," said she to him, "come back to me at night. I must lock my door against the wild hunters. So, in order that I may know you, you must knock and say, 'Little sister, let me in.' And unless I hear that I shall not unlock the door." Then the fawn sprang out, and felt glad and merry in the open air. The king and his huntsmen saw the beautiful animal, and began at once to pursue him, but they could not come within reach of him. For when they thought they were certain of him, he sprang away over the bushes and disappeared. As soon as it was dark, he went back to the little house, knocked at the door, and said, "Little sister, let me in." Then the door was opened to him, and he went in and rested the whole night long on his soft bed. The next morning the hunt began anew, and when the fawn heard the hunting horns and the tally-ho of the huntsmen, he could rest no longer, and said, "Little sister, let me out. I must go." The sister opened the door and said, "Now mind you must come back at night and say the same words." When the king and his hunters saw the fawn with the golden collar again, they chased him closely, but he was too nimble and swift for them. This lasted the whole day, and at last the hunters surrounded him, and one of them wounded his foot a little, so that he was obliged to limp and to go slowly. Then a hunter slipped after him to the little house, and heard how he called out, "Little sister, let me in," and saw the door open and shut again after him directly. The hunter noticed all this carefully, went to the king, and told him all he had seen and heard. Then said the king, "Tomorrow we will hunt again." But the sister was very terrified when she saw that her fawn was wounded. She washed his foot, laid cooling leaves round it, and said, "Lie down on your bed, dear fawn, and rest that you may be soon well." The wound was very slight, so that the fawn felt nothing of it the next morning. And when he heard the noise of the hunting outside, he said, "I cannot stay in. I must go after them. I shall not be taken easily again." The sister began to weep and said, "I know you will be killed, and I left alone here in the forest and forsaken of everybody. I cannot let you go." "Then I shall die here with longing," answered the fawn. "When I hear the sound of the horn, I feel as if I should leap out of my skin." Then the sister, seeing there was no help for it, unlocked the door with a heavy heart, and the fawn bounded away into the forest, well and merry. When the king saw him, he said to his hunters, "Now, follow him up all day long till the night comes, and see that you do him no hurt." So as soon as the sun had gone down, the king said to the huntsman, "Now, come and show me the little house in the wood." And when he got to the door, he knocked at it and cried, "Little sister, let me in." Then the door opened, and the king went in, and there stood a maiden more beautiful than any he had seen before. The maiden shrieked out when she saw, instead of the fawn, a man standing there with a gold crown on his head. But the king looked kindly on her, took her by the hand, and said, "Will you go with me to my castle and be my dear wife?" "Oh, yes," answered the maiden, "but the fawn must come too. I could not leave him." And the king said, "He shall remain with you as long as you live, and shall lack nothing." Then the fawn came bounding in, and the sister tied the cord of rushes to him, and led him by her own hand out of the little house. The king put the beautiful maiden on his horse, and carried her to his castle, where the wedding was held with great pomp, so she became Lady Queen. And they lived together happily for a long while. The fawn was well tended and cherished, and he gamboled about the castle garden. Now the wicked stepmother, whose fault it was that the children were driven out into the world, never dreamed but that the sister had been eaten up by wild beasts in the forest, and that the brother, in the likeness of a fawn, had been slain by the hunters. But when she heard that they were so happy, and that things had gone so well with them, jealousy and envy arose in her heart, and left her no peace, and her chief thought was how to bring misfortune upon them. Her own daughter, who was as ugly as sin and had only one eye, complained to her and said, "I never had the chance of being a queen." "Never mind," said the old woman to satisfy her. "When the time comes, I shall be at hand." After a while, the queen brought a beautiful baby boy into the world, and that day the king was out hunting. The old witch took the shape of the bedchamber woman and went into the room where the queen lay, and said to her, "Come, the bath is ready. It will give you refreshment and new strength. Quick, or it will be cold." Her daughter was within call, so they carried the sick queen into the bathroom and left her there. And in the bathroom they had made a great fire, so as to suffocate the beautiful young queen. When that was managed, the old woman took her daughter, put a cap on her, and laid her in the bed in the queen's place, gave her also the queen's form and countenance, only she could not restore the lost eye. So, in order that the king might not remark it, she had to lie on the side where there was no eye. In the evening, when the king came home and heard that a little son was born to him, he rejoiced with all his heart, and was going at once to his dear wife's bedside to see how she did. Then the old woman cried hastily, "For your life, do not draw back the curtains to let in the light upon her. She must be kept quiet." So the king went away, and never knew that a false queen was lying in the bed. Now, when it was midnight and everyone was asleep, the nurse, who was sitting by the cradle in the nursery and watching there alone, saw the door open, and the true queen come in. She took the child out of the cradle, laid it in her bosom, and fed it. Then she shook out its little pillow, put the child back again, and covered it with the coverlet. She did not forget the fawn either. She went to him where he lay in the corner and stroked his back tenderly. Then she went in perfect silence out at the door. And the nurse, next morning, asked the watchman if anyone had entered the castle during the night, but they said they had seen no one. And the queen came many nights, and never said a word. The nurse saw her always, but she did not dare speak of it to anyone. After some time had gone by in this manner, the queen seemed to find voice, and said one night, "My child, my fawn, twice more I come to see, twice more I come, and then the end must be." The nurse said nothing, but as soon as the queen had disappeared, she went to the king and told him all. The king said, "Ah, heaven, what do I hear? I will myself watch by the child tomorrow night." So at evening he went into the nursery, and at midnight the queen appeared and said, "My child, my fawn, once more I come to see, once more I come, and then the end must be." And she tended the child as she was accustomed to do before she vanished. The king dared not speak to her, but he watched again the following night and heard her say, "My child, my fawn, this once I come to see, this once I come, and now the end must be." Then the king could contain himself no longer, but rushed towards her, saying, "You are no other than my dear wife?" Then she answered, "Yes, I am your dear wife." And in that moment, by the grace of heaven, her life returned to her, and she was once more well and strong. Then she told the king the snare that the wicked witch and her daughter had laid for her. The king had them both brought to judgment, and sentence was passed upon them. The daughter was sent away into the wood, where she was devoured by the wild beasts, and the witch was burned and ended miserably. And as soon as her body was in ashes, the spell was removed from the fawn, and he took human shape again. And then the sister and brother lived happily together until the end.